start with that homework problem from last night, which is your number 12 in the ACE problems. This is a really good test question. Okay, but I would say there's a little bit of bonus level in here, but not all of it. And I think you should expect to see something with a buying price, a markup, all of that stuff tomorrow. Okay, or Thursday. So,
So like on the project, I sort of got confused because we have to take out the commission.
yeah, I'm gonna
have to do that on the test.
Yeah, everything on this problem you should be able to do, with the possible exception of the algebraic piece, the bottom. Okay, so I'm just gonna write these a little bit bigger. If you guys can't, if you don't have your book open, that's a 48. This is a 252 here, and this is 1440. And this is 54. Okay, and this is the profit column, the commission column, the selling price, the markup, and the buying price. And it tells you the markup is 80%. So let me kind of go through this a little bit, and then we can stop and do questions, and then I can repeat things. I think it helps if you watch it once or twice. We started this before Thanksgiving break, and you had a lot of break. It's kind of hard to remember everything. But it says your markup is 80% of the buying price. And in the first, I'm going to just call this part A. In this first one, you know your markup is $48. So for part A, we know the markup is $48. And that's also the same as 80% of the buying price. So one way is to set up a ratio like that. This would allow you to get to 10%, because I could divide by 8 here. So that would give me a 10 here and a 6 there. Does that make sense? So since the 48 is 80% of the buying price, I now know that 10% of the buying price is $6. So 100% of the buying price would have to be $60. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. So I could put the $60 into the buying price. Should I keep going? Okay. So the selling price would be the 60 plus the 48, which is $108. So this next part, the commission, it says the commission is 25% of the markup. So now we're going to do a new problem for commission, and I know $48 represents the entire markup. Does that make sense? So now I'm looking at the 48 in a different way. I'm not comparing the 48 to the buying price. I'm starting with the 48 as the whole markup. And the commission's 25% of that, so when you do 25%, you just divide by 4. And that's $12, 48 divided by 4. So you know that you have a $12 commission. Okay, so far? Okay. So the profit is the difference between the markup and the commission. So that's the money the shop makes. The salesperson gets the commission, so the shop doesn't get all of the markup. They only get part of the markup. Okay. So when you take 48 and subtract 12, you get 36. Alrighty? Okay. So we'll keep going then. I'm going to just take all of this and make it small. And if we have questions about it, we can come back to it in a minute. So we have room for the next problem. So that was for A. I can stretch it out for you guys later. So for B, So now we're gonna do part B. What we know is the selling price. So it's a little bit different, okay? But you can use the reasoning from part A. So in part A, we figured out the selling price, $108. But since it's the buying price and the markup, the buying price is 100% of the buying price, the markup's 80% of it. So the selling price is 180% of the buying price. Does that make sense? Because you're taking the original and adding 80% of itself. So if you know that, then you have your selling price now, and you know your selling price is 180% of the original book. We don't know what the original is, but we do know that the selling price is $252. Does that make sense? Okay, we're okay on that? So we want to get down to 10%, which would be the easiest, so we could divide by 18 to get a 10. You can move over there. Does that make sense? So I'm going to divide this by 18. So when I divide 252 by 18, 18 goes into 252 once. There's a remainder of 7. 18 goes into 72 4 times. So we know 10% of the selling price of the buying price is $14. Can you find the buying price now? What do you do, Tyson?
Multiply by 10.
Yeah, you're going to multiply by 10. So you have 140. So we have the buying price, which makes this problem easier to solve now. Because I can now get the markup by saying, I know that my buying price is $140. So 10% of that's $14. I need to get 80% of that to get the markup. I'm going to multiply by 8. Yeah. So 8 times 10 is 80. 8 times 4 is 32. So what's that add up to? 112 dollars. So that's our markup. So, you have a question?
Didn't you also just do the selling price with the selling price?
Could have done that. I don't know why I didn't do that. Alright, I did extra work. Good point. Did you guys hear what he said? Yeah. I was kind of going back to the first problem, like I didn't have that middle piece, wasn't I? Thank you for pointing that out. So for the markup, 25%, the commission, I'm just going to take the 112 and divide it into 4, right? To get the commission. So if I take 112 and divide it by 4, half of 112 is 56, so half of 56 is 28. $28. So far, so good. And then the profit is 112. Take away 28. So $84. Yeah. How are we doing so far? Good? Okay. So that's part B. Shrink it up. that over here. Oh, I think I lost, did I lose part of part in it? No, there it is. Okay, so for part C, on part C, you have the commission, and you know that's a fourth of the markup. So for part C, if you just take that commission, 1440, and times it by 4, you would get the markup, wouldn't you? Okay, so 1440,
What did you get the
the commission's a fourth of the markup.
Oh, yeah.
So 4 times 0 is 0, 16, carry the 1, 17, carry the 1, 57, 60. Okay. So that's the markup. And that's 80% of the buying price. So you have to take away, like, figure out how to get from 80%, which we've done, down to 10% again. So if 80% of the buying price is $57.60, then we can divide by 8 to get 10%. So 8 goes into 57, how many times? 56, right? So the remainder is 1. 8 goes into 16 twice. So 720. Okay. That's 10%. So we're going to multiply that by what? 10, right? So 100% is $72. Now we can do buying price plus markup. 72 plus $57.60. And check my addition there. I'm getting 129.60. Is that what you guys got this morning? Anybody get that? Okay. And then the profit, again, is just markup, take away commission. You sure? So the profit is the markup of 57.60. Take away the commission of 1440. $43.20. Okay. Any questions on that? So far, okay? You could do that on a test. It's a good test question. Okay, so I'm going to shrink this up. And so this next part, it's starting with the profit. Good. Yeah, Joe.
Remember what I did?
Yeah, what'd you do?
So I didn't feel very much older, so I went up one, the up on the road.
Uh-huh.
It, yeah, 42.20 divided by 14.40, and then I found out that number, and then I figured, like, if I did 54 by that number, I'd get the commission. Because all the percentages are supposed to be the same.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that would work. Let me just ask you this, and maybe we write them both down. I did something similar, but I looked at row A because the numbers were easier. And I said that the profit of $36, just you're saying everything's proportional, compared to the buying price, is always going to be the same. And that reduced by 6, so I got 6 out of 10. Which is because you were comparing these two. So this is true. Comparing these two in a ratio form is always going to be the same. Comparing any two columns in ratio form are always going to be the same. And I just picked the first column and the last column because I knew that if I got the buying price first, it makes the rest of my work easy. But what you did works. And so in other words, if you guys don't see what I'm talking about, if I take 84, and then Grace, I'll take your question or comment, and I compare it to 140, if you think about that, divide them in half, and you get 42 to 70, 7 goes into both of these, and you get the ratio of 6 to 10 again. Do you see that? So in this problem, the ratio of profit to buying price is always 6 to 10. It wouldn't always be 6 to 10 in every problem. It depends on what your percent of buying price is and your percent commission is. But once you get a pattern, you can see that. And so then you could say, so 54 compared to something, whatever that something's going to be, is always 6 to 10. And you can solve that proportion. Grace?
Trying to figure out how to get one of the numbers that one of the profits from the board go into 54. So I divided the first one by 6.
Uh-huh. Oh, I like that. So she actually used like a whole ratio table idea. So let's go back to Joe's first. What Joe did was he divided the 4320 by 1440, right? And when you do that, it's a little messier, but it works nicely. As long as you don't mind doing the division, it's triple, right? And so that means you could take the 54 and divide it into 3 parts, right? So 3 into 54 is 18. See what he did? So he worked right to left, okay? What Grace did, and then Casey, just a second there, she looked at the top row and kind of realized each one of them has 6 in it, so she sort of rewrote it as 10, 8, 18, 2, and 6. So she reduced everything by 6, and then figured out how to get to 6. To get from 6 to 54, you have to multiply by 9. I like that. And so then you have to multiply 2 by 9 to get to the 18. You have to multiply the 18 by 9. So 90 plus 72. So 162. And then 8 by 9 and 10 by 9. That works. That's a great, both of those work really nicely. Okay? And what I did was I realized the ratio of the right to the left was 6 to 10. So I just did 6 to 10, and then I knew to get to 54 I had to multiply by 9. Oops. And then once I got the 90, I went this way. There's lots of ways to do that, and they all work. Somebody had a hand up over here. Casey, was that you, or got it? So it's great, you guys. So basically, I guess the summary is 60% or 60% of the first number is the last number. You see that? Like, if you take, you know how, if I wanted to find 60% of a number, I could just multiply by 0.6, right? Or multiply by 6/10. So if I take 60, then I multiply by 0.6, I get 36. If I take 90 and multiply by 0.6, I get 54. See that? Yeah, so the rule here for this column here is take the first buying price, which they call N, and multiply by 0.6. And then to get the markup, the same idea, you would multiply N by 0.8. And to get the selling price, you would add them. 1N plus 0.8N. That's one way to write it. And then the commission, so here's the commission. Using that same idea, you could do a ratio of 12 to 60, right? What fraction is 12 out of 60? A fifth, right? So you're really just taking N and dividing it by 5. Erases work here. So you could write in this row N over 5, or that's the same as 20% of N. Okay. So big homework problem, but it was really the only big homework problem. Good test review problem. Okay. So how could I test you on that? Well, I could give you a chart with, less things, because I think there's a lot there. Maybe 2 or 3 rows instead of 5 rows. And, maybe just have some different values here, right? Could you do it with a 60% markup and a 20% commission? The concept should be the same. The numbers, of course, would be different. Tyson.
So will the end problem be different?
That's kind of I think we will all have a bonus on the test. I don't know that that would be the bonus, but that would be kind of a bonus level problem. Okay, can I keep going? And that was my big goal, was to get through that today. Let's talk about just simple review problems. Number 1, A and B. You want to just try these? Take a couple minutes, and let's say we have 20 minutes, right? Should I just work through them? And then if you want to try them yourself, you could go online and watch it, but before it actually works out, you can pause it. That way we get through everything. So, absolutely, you can just copy down, follow along, whatever works for you. So, easy problem. You always kind of want to make sure there's some easy problems on the test. So hopefully you guys see that as a pretty easy problem and get X is 24. Second one, same idea, not as easy. So many ways to do it, right? You could go with the common denominator, which is like cross multiplying. So you could multiply this by 30 and this by 9. Right? That's one way. So if the denominators are the same, we really just need to go 9 times something is equal to 150, right? See where I'm getting that from? Okay, so we're really just looking at that, which is basically a division problem, right? Because I want to figure out how many times does 9 go into 150. So I'm going to just divide 150 by 9. So remember, fraction bars mean divide. So if I do 150 by 9, 9 goes into 15 once. What's the remainder? 6, right? 9 goes into 60. 8, right? I mean, 6. That's 54, right? So what's the remainder? Yeah, it's 6 again, right? So it's going to be okay. Here's my train of thought there. Does that make sense? Okay, I don't really have a problem to the right, even though I have a third X over there. So that's one way. The other way is just to, I'm going to erase this. The other way is just figure out how many times 30 goes into 9 and multiply that same number by 5. So 30 divided by 9 is 3, right? And you get 27. And you're going to have that repeating decimal again, aren't you? You get another 30. So 3 in the third, or 3.3 repeating. So you have to multiply 5 by 3 in a third. You have to use the 1/3 if you don't have a calculator, which you aren't going to have, because otherwise you'll have a rounding error. Okay. So 5 times 3 in the third is still going to give you 16 and 2/3. Okay. So it's an easier and a harder. Okay. So I have to shrink this up for the next one. So the table to the below and to the right, I think it needs to be a little bigger. Can you see that? Those numbers? So here's a table problem like your first quiz, I think, in this unit. I can't remember. It was one of the quizzes. And use the data to complete each statement. So the ratio of Australian gold medals. So this is about the gold medals in one of the Olympics. So Russian gold medals. You're just doing a simple ratio. So Australian gold would be 7. Russian gold would be 24. So, yeah, I should have reversed the wording, because Australian to Russian, if I wanted the Russian to be a 1, this would have to be 7/24, wouldn't it? That's not a very great question. So if I change this, the ratio of Russian to Australian, it's a better question, isn't it? You see why? So Russian to Australian, at least you can kind of get a sense of about how many more. So if I want this to be a 1, so see the word about? That's an estimate word. So really I want to think about that instead of 24 divided by 7, what do I really want to think about it as? 24 divided by 6. About 6 or 8, right? So a good estimate would be about 3 or 4 to 1, right? Because it says the word about. So this would be about 3 to 1, you could even say, or about 4 to 1. So if I asked you a question like this on the test, if the word about comes in, it's an estimating problem. Does that make sense? So you're supposed to kind of look at that and go, okay, about. So in other words, Canada had about as many total medals as Australia. I would say they had about 1/8 as many. Do you see that? Because I would sort of estimate up Australia to about 8. And then I would say Canada had about 1/8 as many total medals as Australia. Oh, that's golds. So go to total medals right here. I would change that 35 to what? 36. 36, because Canada had 18. So we'd say Canada had about a half as many, right? See that? So this problem is really an estimating problem when you see the word about. It's not really a work out exactly problem, right? It's let's make the numbers divide evenly when you see the word about. For the first problem is an exact problem, part B. It's saying find the value. Okay? Raise your hand if that makes sense. It's quiet today. Okay. So here, there are about 60 M&Ms in a 2-ounce bag. Use a proportion or a ratio table. In other words, show me what you're doing to complete the following statements. So if this is true in a 2-ounce bag, there are about how many in a 5-ounce bag, or how will we do that, right? So we've got numbers of M&Ms to ounces. So if you know that there's 60 in a 2-ounce bag, there's 30 in a 1-ounce bag, so in a 5-ounce bag there's 150, right? Okay, so kind of an easy problem still, right? Some are easy, some are medium, some are difficult. The table was a difficult problem. There are blank M&Ms, oops, in 1 ounce is what that should say. I just typed these up really quick this morning. There are blank M&Ms per ounce. 30, so that's just a unit rate, right? If 1 ounce is about 25 grams, then 1 M&M, how do we do that?
So what do you get for 1 in 25 and 30?
We know 1 ounce, right, is 25 grams, right? So we know that we have 30 M&Ms, not millimeters, per 25 grams, right? Do you guys see that? And we want to figure out what 1 M&M weighs. So I don't want to figure out what 30 M&Ms weigh, I want to figure out what 1 M&M weighs. Reversed of what you said. 25 divided by 30. So this would be 25 divided by 30. So that's 5/6, right? You get that? So 1 M&M weighs 5/6 of a gram. So that's like the conversions in Unit 3, where they would give you some kind of conversion. We okay with that? Going too fast? Kyle walks 2/3 of a mile in 4 minutes. Did you know that, Kyle?
No.
So miles per minute. One thing I remembered that was a trouble spot for some of you on the quizzes was labeling, and then you lost track of your work. Don't forget to label. So Kyle walked 2/3 of a mile in 4 minutes, and we want to see how long it will take him to walk 2 3/4 miles. So it'd be nice to get to a whole number of miles, wouldn't it? So could I multiply this by something really easy to get a whole number? Yeah, Joe? Yeah, triple. So if I triple, I get 2 here. And I get 12 here. So I know he does 2 miles per 12 minutes, or a mile per 6 minutes.
Wait, how many?
2 3/4. Okay. So can I get 1/4 of a mile while I'm here? If I divide by 4, right? So what's 6 divided by 4? 1.5, right? Can I get 3/4? Triple, right? 4.5. So now I have 2 3/4 takes 16.5 minutes, right? Medium difficulty. I think you have one like that on a quiz. Some kind of recipe thing, maybe. So you have to be able to deal with fractions. Okay. In 2011, Emma made $50,000. If she received a 4% raise in 2012, what was her new salary? So that's way easier than the commission problem, isn't it? So you'll see something easy. I just didn't want to start with easy because we might not have finished the hard. So we know 100% of her salary, not 1,000%.
Like at a point.
I could just add a point. 100% of her salary was $50,000. So 10% of her salary is what?
5,000.
5,000, right? So could we get 1%?
So it would be 500.
It'd be 500, right? So can we get 4%?
2,000.
2,000, right? There's lots of ways to do that problem, right? You don't have to do it that way. You can multiply by 0.04 if you love decimals. No, that's just her raise, right?
I know, but it's asking at the,
Right. But before we keep going, there's lots of ways to get the raise, is what I was trying to say. Right? You don't have to use a ratio table. You could do just a percent multiplying. But as Joe stated, that's just part of the problem. So we're going to do her new salary to be $52,000. Thank you. And it's money. So one of the dollar sign. If it's a big number, you don't always see the decimal places, but let's suppose it didn't round evenly, you would only go to 2 decimal places. In this case, you often don't see the decimal if it's a big number without change. Right? Yeah. We okay so far? Thanks for, like, going back to rereading the question, it's very easy to get distracted as I almost answered the wrong question, right? Because I turned to explain something else. Always go back and reread the question. And when you think you've done the problem, go back and read it and make sure you've answered the right question. And then the last thing, so these are just samplings. You know, you want to study your quizzes. And then these are some other Unit 3 questions. So I would consider this like a third-party study. You should be able to take the graph and give me the equation for it.
Well, I was just wondering if you could like put a link on the website to this so that we can print it out, because I like to have it in paper.
Yeah, I can. I'll try to do that. I don't know how, since it's like I export it. Oh, I have a Word file of it.
Okay.
Well, I have a Word file of most of it. Or I can PDF this. It might be a little blurry, but you can still get it.
Okay.
Okay. So this last one, you want to be able to write an equation. So you have to look at the x. So my suggestion is you look at the x values and see if you can figure out a nice way to get to the y values. Right? So if you had an x, y table, make your own ratio table. If x is 30, y is 120. If x is 60, y is 240. If x is 90, y is 360. What am I doing? You can either go get a unit rate, or you can see a pattern, Grace. So if I wanted to have y equals, so what do you do to x is what I'm... Y equals x times 4, right? So a lot of you can see that. If you can't, you can go to your unit rates, right? You can look at, say, a unit rate, divide by 30 and you get a 1. And you get a 4. If you can find the unit rate in the problem, it tells you how to get from x to y. So if the numbers aren't so easy, okay? So then we know y equals 4x. So the constant is 4, of proportionality. And in this context of the problem, I never got a word problem put together before you came to class, but this has no context right now. But if you look back at your old quizzes, there was things like somebody's calories per gram of granola. You know, so if there's a context, then you would explain what it means in the context of the problem. And if you look at your old quiz, you'll see that. So the part C doesn't apply because I don't have an application problem here. Alrighty, so I'll post this